Ireland survive a scare in Rome and keep the Grand Slam on the roll. England, well, they're victorious in Cardiff in a tight and tense battle against Wales. And France, well, they sent home Scotland to think again and leave their Grand Slam hopes in shatters. Welcome to the TW2 Round 3 review. So Caleb, tight and tense tussle in Wales against England, but England ultimately the victors. What was your overall thoughts?
I thought Steve Borthwick has put his stamp on that team in terms of the blueprint they want to play on. Not too flashy, but it's a good balance if they can create set plays like the one Anthony Watson scored, which Alex is going to talk about in Talking Tactics. It showed a team that's in revolution.
Yeah, and obviously a 10-point win for England in Wales. But if we have a look at this graphic set out, we'll actually see that in terms of statistics, the two teams are actually very close together. So possession, it was 51-49 to Wales. Territory, 45-55 to England. So England won that territory battle very slightly. But even with carries, 126 to 125, tackles made and tackles missed there were also very similar. Alex, what do you think we can take from this? Even though it was a tight statistical battle, England still managed to get that win.
Yeah, I think winning is obviously really important. It's good for your mentality. Owen Farrell, weirdly, isn't playing very well at the moment, even though going into the tournament, you probably would have said he was the best 10 in the Premiership, or one of the best 10s in the Premiership on form. Obviously, he had that little 3-week break that people love talking about. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's only kicking, I think it's about 40%, 44%, something like that.
Yeah, it's about 47, I think.
Okay, so yeah, just about the 47%. But yeah, no, he's not on great form, and I think that's probably why England aren't attacking that well a lot of the time. I mean, that try from Watson was brilliant, but yeah, I mean, the attacking kicks don't seem to be working right now.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what you guys feel, but from set plays, England seem to be finding their rhythm. They seem to be getting that quinzification, if you like, with the new attack setup. But in open play, it's not quite as convincing, Caleb.
Yeah, what I see is a team that's trying to strip back the attack and maybe rebuild it, in Nick Evans being the new attack coach. So they find themselves more comfortable when they have time on the ball. But when they've got that defense shooting up, they struggle to maybe attack. So that's why set phases and set plays and pre-planned moves seem to work, because then they can put people like Ollie Lawrence with the big ball carrying, Alex Dombrand, one of the best eights when it comes to handling the ball and swinging out wide, having more time on the ball, which allows them to fix defenders. So it's something that that's probably developing, but I'm not sure how much time they have to get it unlocked. But it's good to see people like Dombrand growing into that jersey, becoming more like test match operators. Van Poortvliet looking more secure as well. Mm-hmm. I think Borthwick would be pleased, but should be disappointed. They left 10 points out there with Farrell's boot, as we've heard. So maybe Wales were that poor, because if a team doesn't score 10 and you had parity with them in most of the numbers and you still lose the game by 10, questions that Gatland needs to answer.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was a 30 points to 10 drubbing, but if Farrell had his kicking boots on, it could quite easily have been that. England maybe didn't shine in that department, but one place they maybe did shine, Alex, was with Freddie Stewart under the high ball. We sort of touched on it there. I'm going to throw this debate out. We've got to have this debate. Yeah. Is he the best under the high ball?
No.
I think he's been the best under the high ball in the world for the last 2 years.
Absolutely no. I think the lad is 22. He's shown
what's his age got to do with it?
He can catch a good ball, but I don't think there's some world-class operators there. Liam Williams is up there. Villy Leroux isn't bad either. It's good to have a Wales that's not giving you enough pressure and look good under the high ball, but it's going to be different when he plays a defense that actually chases that ball. We saw what it was like last year. Remember, they got booed against South Africa, and he didn't catch many that day. So
maybe he was having an off day, but I'm going to give Alex the chance for the counter argument.
I just don't think his age has anything to do with it. In every game he's played in Test rugby, maybe apart from that South Africa one, he's been excellent under the high ball. And you see, I mean, obviously sometimes punditry is a bit off, but pretty much every pundit on the telly is saying this guy's ridiculous. Because of his frame, he could just get so much higher than pretty much any other fullback in the world at the moment.
But I guess it kind of links back into, maybe let's touch on this Wales performance. They obviously had a kicking game, a kicking plan. They went a lot to Stewart in the air, but they didn't seem to have a plan B.
Yeah, I thought that's when horses for courses selection in terms of what you want to do moving together. I thought the idea of kicking towards Stewart was more to isolate him because they know he doesn't offload. Stewart will carry, and they wanted to target the next breakdown. We've seen teams do that. But then they did not have those jacklet threats. They did not have the people that can go over the ball, your Tommy Raffels, your Jack Morgans. So that seemed not to work. But it was something I think you could see Gatland do more and more. Wales, there's nothing, you're not sure what they're trying to do. That they looked better when they brought in a 33-year-old fly half by subbing a 30-year-old fly half. So the question is, who's next? It's not like one for the future kind of a swap. When Dan Bigger came on, that centre partnership did not look impressive. I would not love to be Warren Gatland today.
I think the main takeaway for me is that Wales just need to choose which direction they want to go, especially if it's going to be a short-term thing, if it's going to be a long-term thing. Do you stick with the experienced players up until this World Cup, or do you go for short-term, maybe a couple of losses, but get the likes of Mason Grady back involved in this side a little bit more, the youth side? But I guess we'll come to see that maybe in the next few weeks. But just to move on to another awesome game that happened this weekend, back at the start of the weekend, Italy versus Ireland. That one ended 20 points to 34 to the Grand Slam hopefuls. You were in the hot seat for that one, Caleb. Italy impressive, Ireland not their best. What do you think?
You know who Italy is like? Italy is like that straight A student who goes and steals the next child's sweets during break time. Impressive at some things, but does something silly at one point, you know? They attack, they put teams under pressure, then they just decide we're going to run it out of our own in goal with the world's best defense. We know how that ends. But I was impressed with a couple of players like Lorenzo Canu, hardly ever gets praise for what he does in the Autumn Nations as well. He was one of those impressive Italian players, and we saw what he can do. And teams that are always improving need a world-class operator at number 8. And hopefully he becomes that for Italy. We saw the number of tackle assists that he does. He gets so much work done. And with a backrow of that French side that has got big, muscling kind of second rowers like Willem said, he did very well. Lots of praise goes to Capuzzo and your Gabisis, but you could see the difference with Gabisi in that number 10 shirt, as when they're Tommy Allen, the ability to play 2 phases ahead, more like I call it the George Ford effect. He does that very well. So brilliant to see what Italy could do, and not just against any side. It was an Antoine Dupont French side. That's a good team to put under pressure.
So speaking of people in the 10 shirt, obviously Johnny Sexton wasn't playing for Ireland this weekend. We had Ross Byrne operating there at 10 with a new centre partnership of Aki and McCloskey. What did you make of their performance? Do you think maybe Ireland weren't quite as sharp as before because of that change-up?
Yeah, I mean, they were okay. They weren't hitting their straps, I don't think. I mean, there is a significant step down from anyone from Jonathan Sexton to Ross Byrne or anyone else in their squad. I mean, Johnny Sexton's probably the best 10 in the world right now.
Dropping big calls in there,
yeah.
nothing but fine. Yeah.
I think it's true on form, but I mean that centre partnership that hasn't really played together before either. So all of that plays into when you're playing at test match level. Normally there's players like Ringrose and the other lads in there, but look, they actually played pretty well. I think Bundyaki was particularly good. There's a little bit of lack of chemistry there, but they were okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see Italy maybe back performing as good as we know we can against England. They weren't at their best. And Ireland, it's just one more step to the Grand Slam, isn't it? It's theirs for the taking. And I'd be surprised if we didn't see them take it. But the final match of the weekend was France versus Scotland. And my oh my, was it an eventful one, especially in the opening. It was the 100th game between the old friends. And it did not disappoint. In the first 12 minutes, we had 2 red cards and 2 tries. Caleb, you were, I'm sure, tuning into this one as well.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on a quite eventful game in Paris.
Look, we always say red cards ruin matches, but when they're absolutely brilliant calls by a collective team of 3 on both sides, they don't ruin matches, do they, if they're the right call? And that's what we want to see. Nikam Shelley and his partners did very well. Carl Dixon, as well as Andrea Piardini and Ben Winehouse in the TMO seat. They were absolutely fantastic. But what we saw there was a French team that can actually get rattled, but on the other side, a French team that knows how to win games they shouldn't. And that's not a game they were supposed to win, is it? It's a game which Scotland showed that they can lose it, but Scotland to come from how many points behind and then be at 4 points at some point, it's madness, and it makes Pool B an exciting prospect come September, October in France, with Ireland the best team in the world. South Africa, the defending champions, and have a go Scotland also in that group. So makes life interesting.
And Scotland were, to put it into perspective, like you just said, they were 19-0 down inside 20 minutes. And then with 10 minutes to go, they were back within 4 points. Now, how do we reflect on this Scotland performance, do you think, Alex?
Look, the 19-0 bit is a bit of a misnomer because obviously they were a man down and it sort of just snowballed. And I think I said in the group chat, oh, this could be 50. But to turn it around is seriously impressive. They just didn't. What I said last week was their try conversion or their 22 conversion rate is so high, it's got to come down. Maybe it went down a little bit too far, but they actually dominated the game. I still think France probably deserved to win it because their defence managed to keep Scotland out in those positions. And Scotland obviously didn't take those chances, but they were really good for the rest of the game. I mean, one thing I did take away from it is Awes just really needs to take a day off. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, I think one of the most funny things about that, obviously, Howarth, one of the men to be sent off, and this is his second red card against Scotland. Last time he was punching Jamie Ritchie in the face, and this time he was headbutting Ben White. I mean, the man is completely mad. And I think the funniest part of that was, as he was getting red carded, he sort of went, what, me? So much that referee actually, through his TMO, went, can we just get a number check on this one? Because he was convinced him. He was convinced him wasn't to be sent off. But yeah, maybe just to touch on France quickly, Caleb. I mean, that first try, they looked so good. They looked undefendable when they're playing at speed with Dupont on top of his game. Wow, they're still an incredible team.
Yeah, they have the best ball presentation in world rugby at the moment. Their ability to make sure that when that cleaner comes and whoever is taking the ball from the base has got a clear shot at the ball. So even sometimes they hand it into Dupont's hand and he just fizzles away. But to look at Scotland failing to convert, there's just two words for it, and that's Sean Edwards. He knows how to stop attacks from scoring tries against him, and he disrupts. But to look at how you've got a French side that even Tamak didn't have his best game and still managed to put a win. And that just shows what Fabien Galtier is building. And I hope that they can keep the momentum, because we've seen teams come before World Cups and look this good, and one off day and everything just goes up in flames.
Yeah, and speaking of Untimac, obviously it was a good 10 battle, wasn't it, on the weekend? Finn Russell once again looking brilliant, and we've got a graphic just to sort of display that. If we have a look at this head-to-head between Untimac and Finn Russell, obviously Untimac played slightly less of this game. Finn Russell played the full game, but if you just, I think the obvious one to take a look at is the receipts, the amount of times that each 10 had the ball in hand. 14 times only throughout the entire game that Untimac had the ball in hand, and in comparison 62 times. Now, we always talk about Finn Russell or getting the ball into Finn Russell's hands. That's what Scotland have done, right?
Yeah.
They've given him the keys and he unlocks everything.
Yeah, there was that one dodgy pass to Thomas Ramos, which is a bit not on the cards. But apart from that, everyone calls him a maverick. I sort of dispute that term, because some of the passes he throws are absolutely crazy. But it's not like he hasn't planned them. His vision is amazing. Some of the stuff he sees is just otherworldly, and some of the kicks he put in. I think they made a line break from one of his cross kicks. He was just on the try line. He just went, okay, I'll have it over there, lad. Just absolutely banged it 40 metres, and they went down the other end of the pitch. It's so good.
It's his ability to play flat to the line, because defense likes to shoot up and close a space, but he's okay. He'll come to you as the defense, and he plays close that line. And what that does, it puts a doubt, and that 12-13 who you pilot to is a good 12-13 combination. But because you've got Finn Russell at 10, it forces the defense to hold a bit. So that's why he's able to throw those passes, because he's forced the defense. We're not sure what he's going to do. Is he going to run into us, or he's going to pass it out wide? So they've got a second guess, and they stay on their heels, which makes him a class operator. I don't think he's a maverick. I think he's a student of the game, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and his confidence to come back from that interception, the game was gone, and he put in one of the best performances of the year. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, well, we've gone through a lot there, boys. 3 incredible games to get stuck into. And speaking of getting stuck into things, these two are about to head off and do some in-depth analysis in Talking Tactics.
Hello and welcome to this week's Talking Tactics. And today we're going to talk about Anthony Watson's brilliant try against Wales. It starts off with a scrum here on the 10-metre line. It's quite a wide one, which is a good place to attack from because there's a lot of space. Isn't there, Caleb?
Yeah, the reason why they say the tight end and the second tight are the two most important team in any squad, two most important players in any squad, is because they give you such a platform. If you can launch from there, you've got 8 and potentially the 9 stuck in there and they can't fold, which gives you more attacking space.
Yeah, a lot of space. So as we see, the scrum here is sort of crumbled and it's a good place for Jack van Poortvliet to pick up and attack from as it rolls on. The play is starting to develop here. Jack van Poortvliet has attacked the opposition 9 and Henry Slater is running a brilliant line, isn't he, Caleb?
Yeah, the whole idea with having ball in hand is to engage as many defenders as you can. And if you look at the two players at the back here, circled at the back, what they force these Welsh defenders to do is 8, 6 and 7 cannot overfold. Justin Tipuric, Talupe Faletau as well, they cannot fold because they're stuck with those attackers with Henry Slade cutting in. The 9 is also engaged. The gap starts to open.
Yeah, and as the play rolls on, we see the ball actually going out of the back, but Owen Williams here, the 10, is absolutely nailed on to Henry Slade running that brilliant dummy line. And as it rolls on further, there's a gap being created because Owen Williams is so far along from his inside centre. Yeah, and Max Mann is just about to run through, isn't he, Caleb?
Yeah, what worries me from a Welsh defensive point of view is these 3 haven't really changed from the previous movement, but you've seen the attacking shape from England has changed. Ollie Lawrence is now on the other side, he's on the outside there, but he was not really on the outside, so they're moving as the ball is shifting, but they're still stuck, plus 3 front rowers and 2 second rowers, not enough numbers.
And you can actually see the distress in the Welsh 12's face here as the play develops. Ollie Lawrence is running through with Max Maylange, which will be crucial later on as the play develops. Owen Farrell's done a really good job here of waiting really late to put Max Maylange into that gap because it means he can hit the play at full speed. And as the play develops even further, he actually gets taken down, doesn't he, Caleb? I don't know how legal that is.
Yeah, well, we call desperate times, call for desperate measures. And what's important about Farrell, you talk about waiting, it's heads-up rugby. In as much as the set play, you still have to play what's in front of you. And what he does there is he forces the defense to make a decision, and that's what you want as an attacker. That's why that happens, late tackle.
We've spoken about him a lot this week, but this is brilliant from him. So the play develops even further, and Max Maylange is actually committing a defender, which you can't quite see on screen here. But as he passes this ball, that is a little bit early for me, that tackle. I don't know what you think, Caleb.
I think it's marginal in terms of the speed that the game is going, so you won't really pick it up that it's early because it's probably slightly a second or 2 earlier than it needs to be, but you won't pick it up, so it's play on. But what's important there is Wales did not scramble. You still see the same players, Talupe Faletau, Justin Tipuric, all stuck in similar positions that they were previously. I don't know if the comms is not there because the backline came in when we saw Farrell with the ball, and they did not fold. It's just worrying, but it's a good set play.
Yeah. So Lawrence is taken down. There's a ruck here, and the ball actually slips out the back of the ruck, which I think is quite important to this play because it means the speed of ball is so quick, and Jack van Poortvliet is going to pick it up. And Farrell has managed to get up off the deck and get over to there, which is very quick, especially as the Welsh forwards are all in this circle, aren't they, Caleb?
They're all stuck in that circle, plus the 2 on the outside. That means that they only have Justin Tipuric, Lee Halfpenny, and the scrum off there to defend on the outside. And there's a lot of England overload. And you've got good ball players coming around. Owen Farrell, good work rate. Alex Dombrand, he can swing a ball, can he? Yeah. And you still have maybe a Maro Itoje out of the back option if need be, or a crush ball in the middle. Yeah. So many options.
It just shows the effectiveness, easy for me to say, of this set play, that all of these players are basically out of the game now.
Yeah.
As the play rolls on, we'll see that actually what England have done here, there's another player, Anthony Watson, who's going to end up scoring over there. It's essentially a 4-on-2, which never really happens in Test rugby, does it?
That's what attacking coaches want. They want to create an overlap, 4-on-2, easy draw and pass.
Yeah.
We say easy, but it needed world-class finishes. We'll see next for Anthony Watson to finish. It's a set play, good scrum platform.
Yeah, so here Doms has got the ball and he's about to throw an absolutely brilliant pass, I think. It's just the little skills here. On the next slide, we see Anthony Watson hasn't had to check his run here, and Don Brandt has just checked his defender, has just stepped across him as he's throwing the pass, which is one of the first things that coaches teach you in rugby, is always try and check your defender, because it means he can't then go and make a tackle, and now it's a one-on-one for Lee Halfpenny on the outside, and a brilliant score, brilliant finish. So, yeah, that was Talking Tactics for this week, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much to Alex and to Caleb for some more insightful looks at England's attack. And joining me now in the studio, I have Fergus Mainland. How are you?
I'm very good.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us for some more chat on Scotland. And Imogen, thank you for joining us with another superb turtleneck, I must say, the second of the show.
It's the turtle day today, apparently.
So, Fergus, we're going to come to you first. And of course, we're here at the press box. We're here talking about some of the things we've seen in the press this week. And you're going to be talking about a piece you've seen from Mark Palmer.
Well, sadly, I wasn't in the Stade de France watching the game, but I did the next best thing, and that was read Mark Palmer's piece. And he got some interesting quotes from Hugh Jones, which links very closely with some stuff that Gregor Townsend has been saying after this France game. And Hugh came out and said that Scotland played some really good rugby at the weekend, which I really think they did. They pushed, as you already mentioned in the show, they pushed France to within 4 points at one point. But they just said that France were on another level. There's a reason that France are one of the top 2 teams in the world and potentially one of the favourites for this World Cup in their own home country. But I think it's not taking away from the fact that Scotland went into France, and I think it could have been an absolute disaster after that first opening few minutes. But Hugh Jones, I think, was integral to that success that Scotland were able to build throughout the match, and he's been integral to their campaign so far.
Yeah, I think we need to give some credit to Hugh Jones, don't we? Because he sort of came in as this incredible star, had come from South Africa and had now burst into this Scotland team. Specifically, he's actually a Scottish African. He just grew up in South Africa. He's actually Scottish. And then he sort of went into the wilderness a little bit, spent some time at Harlequins, and now he's back at Glasgow with his centre partnership to Tuipulotu, and he's done so well for Scotland, hasn't he? He's
been so impressive, and not just in this campaign, but in previous campaigns, he's had some really strong successes. We mentioned in the Calcutta Cup show just how good he was against England a couple of years ago, and how integral he's been to their run of success against England. And his partnership that he's formed up with Sione Tuipulotu has just been outstanding to watch. It's been so impressive, and just the amount of game time that they're able to get at Glasgow is just replicating into what's happening on the Scotland team now. And Gregor's doing what he has to do in a World Cup here, and he's picking on form. And Hugh Jones, I think, is rapidly moving up into one of those top 3 names on his team sheet.
Yeah, and having the likes of Chris Harris on the bench, obviously he wasn't this week because he was welcoming his new baby. I'm not sure if it was girl or boy, but a new baby anyway.
It's
regardless.
a girl. She was born on my birthday as well.
That's nice.
So that's nice.
But yeah, I mean, Imo, just to sort of reflect on that Scottish performance, do you think this is a massive setback for them? Do you think, they can be proud of the performance they've given against a France side in France who were absolutely, trying to bounce back from that loss against Ireland the week before?
Yeah, I think they can be proud. I mean, if you told them this time last year that they'd be on the form that they are in the Six Nations, I think they would have bitten your hand off. So I think they're definitely on track to good things. I think it's definitely a positive start this year going into the World Cup. Obviously with quite a formidable group they've got in that World Cup, so it'll be very interesting to see how they progress and how they can also bounce back from a loss last week to then go again and see what they can bring next week.
Yeah. And I think also, I suppose, one thing that was very interesting is that Gregor Townsend's focus on silverware in this campaign hasn't shifted at all. Yes, they're no longer on for a Grand Slam, and things have gotten a lot more difficult if they want to win the Six Nations, but his focus is still on the Triple Crown, and that's going to be on the line in 2 weeks' time against Ireland at Murrayfield. And some of the comments that Hugh Jones was making is that this Scotland team, at their best, can beat anyone at Murrayfield, in his opinion, and I completely agree with him. I think we're in for a really exciting showdown again, and I think not for the first time in this championship is the Scotland game going to be probably one of the highlights of the weekend.
Yeah, obviously another tough battle coming for Scotland when Ireland come to Murrayfield. And another team also that has to still face Ireland is our dear England. And you've been looking at a piece from Charlie Morgan, who was having a closer look at Owen Farrell and his kicking and maybe his captaincy as well.
Yeah, so Charlie did a great piece in Telegraph, kind of a your questions answered type thing, looking at some of the common questions that have been coming up about Jack Brown-Portfleet, and then I noticed about Owen Farrell, which is something that Caleb and I, when we watched the game at the weekend, kind of picked up on, and that his kicking obviously hasn't been anywhere near Owen Farrell's usual standards of kicking. I think it's 47%.
About 47, roughly.
Yeah, which is not, what we'd normally expect from him. And I think it's interesting, Slade could have kicked and he didn't. So there's a question around, when Farrell was doing so badly off the tee, why he kept going and why it wasn't given to someone like Slade. But I also think it's interesting that given Farrell's captain, he kind of has to start in some position. And, we had him back at 10 this week and we didn't have him in the 12 shirt. So it would be expected that he'll be kicking rather than someone like Marcus at 10. But I think when you bring in the whole captaincy thing as well, do we think that Steve's kind of limited England by having Farrell having to start all the time?
All being said and done, I don't know if making Farrell the captain, we're talking about this 2-3 weeks ago, right? I think we all kind of felt it was the right call at the time. Courtney Lawes was out injured. He was maybe another person who could have taken up that role. Even other candidates, maybe Tom Curry as well, was injured.
Yeah, so Ellis and Courtney are
Ellis,
vice captains. Obviously, Courtney's only just come back.
Yeah.
Ellis has started every game,
Yes,
I'd like to say. Yeah, so I think it's very interesting when you look at Farrell's performance, and Steve could have either used it as an opportunity to kind of stamp his intent on the team and name a whole new captain. People might have said, oh, Ellis, he picked him as his captain at Tigers, so is that a bit of Tigers bias? But then he went for Owen, which he felt was the best person. He showed great traits as a captain that Steve saw in himself as an England captain. I think he'd probably be one of the best people to be picking, as he's been in those shoes himself. But I do think it'll be interesting to see after the Six Nations if he will change Owen as captain, just purely, maybe not because of his captaining ability, but someone else might be able to start in that shirt. We've got George Ford coming back. Marcus Smith had, 20 seconds off the bench or something at the weekend. So it'll definitely be interesting to see if Farrell turns it around. I think he said that he's going to pinpoint his kicking and practice that, and obviously we will hope that improves. But whether Steve looks now and goes, okay, or maybe someone else can take that role. I don't think Owen performs any differently as a captain. People like Ellis Genge, the way he performed as captain of Tigers, you just saw a completely different person, and the way he stepped into that role, I think, was brilliant. Whereas Owen, I think, is pretty similar whether he's captain or not, so it could be interesting to see it shaken up a bit.
Well, he's obviously not captain at Saracens on a week-in, week-out basis in the Gallagher Premiership, and that has no impact on his playing at all. And I just think I wouldn't be surprised if Steve moves on from Owen as captain. Not so much, I think, from a leadership point of view. I think he would still be considered in the leadership group, maybe even a vice captain. But all of a sudden, I think, as Imogen, as you were saying, he's not limited with his creativity. And I think with the problem at the moment, if you're trying to do a bit of experimentation with your team, automatically your first name on the team sheet has to be Owen Farrell, and it has to be, I've got to play him for a long period in the game. And I think if you maybe shift that to one of your reliable forwards, your Jamie Georges or your Ellis Genges, then you can start to play around a lot more with your back row and implement the style of rugby that you want to do with Nick Evans as well.
I think I've heard...
Sorry, to close it up then, we're going to come with the TW2 party line. Next week, or in 2 weeks' time, we have the option of taking the captaincy away from Farrell, giving it to Genge maybe. Well, is that what you would do?
Well, I think George Ford obviously hasn't played too many games back of injury, but the reports I've heard coming out of Sale about him and the way he's been such an influence off the field, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he took that role. But then again, that 10 shirt, which is something that's been so highly contested, do you want to put the captaincy on that 10 shirt and then risk, not being able to put Marcus on or Owen on if Ford starts or whatever? I think I personally would like to see it given to someone else just for a bit of change and a bit of Steve's impact on the game. I'd like to see that.
Fergus, your decision?
Well,
because obviously Steve Borthwick will be watching.
Obviously. Yes, of course. Hello, Steve.
Well, my first piece of advice to Steve would be, if you want to avoid a media disaster, don't change your captaincy next week. So whatever we suggest, don't listen to it. But I always think it's very interesting looking at where countries around the world will put their captains, and there's not really a system to it at all. You look at Scotland and Wales and Italy, they're going with forwards. Ireland are going with Johnny Sexton at 10 when he plays at 10.
And Dan Biggar was captain of Wales previously as well.
Exactly. So there's a huge variety of where people will place their captains. maybe someone like, I think maybe Amara Itoje. He's sort of a consistent second row. There's a bit rogue.
Well,
Chuck that in there, taking a bit of inspiration from your Jamie Ritchie's. But to be honest, I think if I was going safe, then I'd go with a Jamie George and Ellis Genge.
Yeah,
up front.
I think Ellis Genge might be the TW2 party line for now.
Baby Rhino for captain.
Yeah, well, the old adage is you've always got to have a forward as a captain, whether that's old-fashioned or not. You never know. But Fergus and Imo, thank you very much for joining me in the press room, press box, whatever we call it now. And next up, we are going to be looking at possibly the best moments of the week in the Abida moment of the week. It was the week of the intercept in round 3 of the 2023 Six Nations, and one in each game, in fact. And we're here to decide which one was the best in the Abida moment of the week. And to do that, I am joined once again by Caleb Mutumbwa and Alex Reid. Caleb, we're going to start with you. 3 intercept tries, 3 games. What's your pick?
Well, it's good to see interceptions happen without Brian O'Driscoll or Jean de Villiers, so that's good. Rugby has moved on. Lewis Rees-Zammit, Pierre Bruno intercept, as well as Vamos Ramos. Is that what
Ramos
we're calling
Ramos,
him?
that is official title. Yeah.
My favorite one was the one in Italy, that Pierre Bruno intercept. I think it was a clutch moment intercept. Somebody who was stuck in a weird place defensively. If those hands go through, Ireland love to stack that attack. They score. But he made a gut feel call. I'm going in there. And Boyd did not grab it under the sticks. I think that's my moment of the week.
Do you think it almost, in the same time he saved a try, he scored a try? Whereas in maybe the Lewis Rees-Zammit one, for example, he was taking advantage of some sort of dodgy England backs move.
Yeah, and there's backing yourself. He's making a read. If he misses that, a coach who's doing defense is going to have a go at him for why did you not wait and buy time. But he went for it, and he got 7 points. Stopped a try, potential 5-pointer, and got 7 points. Think high risk, high reward.
Alex, Vamos Ramos intercept. Was it a poor Finn Russell pass? Was it a great read? Was it a bit of both?
I think Ben Kay had it right. It was a poor Finn Russell pass. Normally when you fire a pass across the line like that, you have to have a man on the outside to run onto it and break through. But it was 4-on-4 and Ramos read it and he was like, oh, I can just jump out of the line because there's not going to be anyone behind me. And then obviously he went under the sticks. But it still was a good read, but it wouldn't have happened if.
It was a difficult one for Russell because so he couldn't quite see that fourth defender. He couldn't actually see Ramos. He was slightly tucked back because he was so flat to the line. But I guess that's the risk reward with Russell, isn't it? What was your favourite out of those 3?
Mine was the same as the Italy one, purely because obviously there's always risks with interceptions. Like if you miss the ball, they're probably going to make a massive amount of ground. But if he missed that ball, they were going to go and score because I think it was a 4-on-1 on the outside. And he's come from absolutely miles away to go and grab that ball. It was a bit of a dodgy pass from Aki, I thought, as well, because the proper pass was the short line outside of him. But yeah, it was a good read and good score.
Yeah, neither of you have gone for the Louis Rees-Zammit intercept, and just for the sake of argument, not that I enjoyed it as an England fan, but I'm going to argue his case. I mean, it's straight after that half. The scores were really tight. I think it was 8-3 at that point. It was regardless. It was a very tight game, and that first half was incredibly tight. They come out 2 minutes maybe in the second half, and he's already nabbed the ball and he's under the post. I think in terms of a momentum shifter, like let's forget that Sinclair scored again 2 minutes later for England. But as a moment, it was pretty huge for Wales at that point.
I think it was actually 30 seconds into the second half.
Was it only 30 seconds?
Yeah,
really?
Some fans were still taking their seats. You'd be very annoyed if you paid that much for a ticket and not seen one of the tries.
Yeah. What do you think, Caleb?
It was a gift from England. He hardly ever worked for that one. I think a number 8 would have intercepted that one and scored, especially if a number 8 were of Dombrand's quality on the opposite side. He just happened to have the feet enough that nobody's going to chase him.
You weren't that impressed with him, were you?
I'm not underwhelmed. England did not do well. They gave Rees-Zammit a try, so doesn't make my cut this week.
Okay, so is it time for the vote? The intercept of the week, the Abby Wow intercept of the week. Who are you going for, Alex?
Yeah, Pierre Bruno.
Pierre Bruno for Italy, yeah?
Yeah, it's got to be in Rome.
Got to be in
Rome.
Is it a triple crown in Rome? 3 votes from the TW2 for the intercept from Pierre Bruno. I think that was pretty impressive, and think, like we said, it at the same moment he was scoring one at the other end, he was preventing another try for Ireland. So very impressive from Pierre Bruno. We'll be sending you, Pierre, that trophy in the post over to Rome very soon. But thank you once again for going through the best moments, the best intercepts of the week, guys. And finally, in our last section of the show, we will be previewing the next round of the 2023 Six Nations. Well, we have to take another week off of Six Nations action, but when we're back in 2 weeks' time, we have 3 awesome games to look forward to, and to preview those ones, I have Caleb, I have Alex, and we're going to kick off with the first match of that weekend, which will be Italy versus Wales. Ooh, it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it, Caleb?
Yeah, hopefully a quieter follow week. But if you're talking about what's happening on the field, Wales might just be wooden spoon candidates. Italy are playing good rugby. They're figuring things out. If they learn how to kick when they're in their in goal or when they're under the pump in their own 22 and kick intelligently, exit smart, Wales are lacking in confidence, and Italy obviously have done a number on them before, so they know this can be done. And Wales might just end last on the Six Nations. So I'm calling Italy to win. Man of the match, number 8 for Italy.
Lorenzo Cannone.
Cannone, yeah.
Could be, yeah.
My
And
man.
we know what happened last year. We know what happened in Cardiff. And this time it's in Rome, where they've performed well. They obviously haven't got their win yet this year, Italy. Is it going to happen again?
Oh, I really hope so. I really hope so. I think it will actually as well. I think they're in better form. They've got the better players at the moment. A lot of the Welsh players haven't been hitting their straps, but I mean, Garbisi, Capuozzo, Cannone, Negri, all of these lads have played well throughout the tournament so far, and I think they're favourites, to be honest, which you wouldn't have said last year.
So we both calling Italy for this win. We're not giving Wales any chance.
Yeah, that's good, because there's no more that send Italy out of the Six Nations chat is there. So
Now that is such a positive, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because this time last year, that win has sort of catalysed this incredible rise for Italy. They went on and did well against Australia, obviously, in the autumn as well. We're at a totally different point with Italy now, right? Their place in this tournament is secure, regardless of whether they win on the weekend or not.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, I guess we'll find out by Saturday lunchtime next week whose kitchen drawer is getting a little replenished with a nice wooden spoon. And later that day, we will have a big one here in the TW2. It's England versus France. France are coming to Twickenham, to a place they haven't won since 2005. Now, that is a big record to come and try and beat, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be any year, it will be this year. England have been a bit off, as we know. Hopefully England play better than they did against Wales, otherwise they definitely aren't going to win, I don't think.
What do they need to improve on in order to secure this win against France, Caleb?
they need to be able to take their chances when they get them, because they might not get that many against that French side. But I'm also interested to see how Steve Borthwick selects his team. He's talked a lot about horses for courses, and I didn't think giving Marcus Smith 15 seconds is a horses for courses selection with 15 seconds to go in a match. So will he keep Farrell at 10, Henry Slade at 13? I think what England need to improve on is what they exactly want to do with which players in that team. It's one thing picking the best 15 on form, but it's another thing picking the best 15 for the game you want to play vis-a-vis the opposition you're playing.
Yeah, and we know that both France, this is how they got so good, is playing without the ball. And England are now trying to do the same, playing without the ball. It's probably not going to be the most exciting game, maybe apart from set pieces, but what are you expecting to see at the weekend?
Well, I mean, hopefully England...
Other than a lot of kicking.
Yeah, it's good. They are going to kick the ball a lot. Hopefully England win those kicking battles, because, I mean, France are going to try and pin them back in their own 22. That's one of the benefits of having Max Malins in the team, is that he's a pretty good kicker from hand. I mean, he used to play 10 and hasn't for a while now, but yeah, I can't see England getting anything out of the game, if I'm honest. If I'm thinking about it now, I can't see a future where England win in that game.
And are you of the same opinion?
Somebody who's going to be key is Henry Slade with that intelligent left boot. In terms of kicking from both sides, they can put Farrell on the other side, Slade on the other side, and they're quite comfortable at the back. I'm hoping Steve Borthwick shows us a little bit more of his hand in attack, or Nick Evans. I would hate to have an 80,000 packed Twickenham having to see bombs being diffused from the air by Thomas Ramos and Freddie Stewart. I'm certain people from the TW2 are going to watch that game, would want to see Anton Dupont doing things with the ball. They want to see Anthony Watson, if he plays, having a bit of a go, and Max Malins showing his ability to play make. And you know that it's closer home to Alex Dombrand, so maybe he'll have a bit more pep in his step after showing a bit more this past weekend. I'm calling France to win that by 1, but we're going to see a different English side. We're going to see the England that we saw versus New Zealand in the autumn in those last 8 minutes.
Oh, that's a big call, really. You think so?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, one of the big things in all games is the 10 versus the 10, where Owen Farrell obviously has been talked about a lot on this show, as he has across the sort of rugby media sphere, where his best position might be. Is it 10? Is it 12? But I think here on the TW2, on this graphic, we're going to show that we have a new theory that Owen Farrell should in fact be playing at flanker. We've popped him up against Jack Willis here, and you see obviously Jack has played a little bit less minutes, but in terms of ball carries, Owen Farrell is winning, 21 to 10. Carry meters, he's also far superior. Tackles, he's just nipped him as well, 33 to 30. And breakdown steals, they're equal. So, you know, I mean, back in the Eddie Jones era, we used to talk about wingers who could be, you know, hybrid flankers.
Yeah.
You know, Jelanche is out for France now. He's obviously injured his ACL and is probably out for the rest of Six Nations. You know, there's a fresh 7 coming in there, or a fresh 6 coming in there. Maybe they need a new challenge. Maybe they need Owen Farrell to come in and to just shake them up a little bit. Thoughts?
Why not? Why not? I mean, he's got the build for it, and he's athletic enough. So yeah, just chuck him in at 7. I want to see that. I think everyone else does. Although he needs to improve his tackle technique as well.
Yeah, he's not quite Sam Underhill in that department, is he? No.
It's if he's playing so much on the defensive side, then it shows that England haven't shown us some attacking play. Is he the guy that can spark England attack? He isn't really well known for his unlocking defense attacking prowess. He's more well known for putting players into space with those on the more thorough passes. And with France, they're going to need some creativity. Does George Ford come into the reckoning? We know he's been kicking in and out of the squad. He's fit. Does Marcus Smith start? I think it's big questions. Give Marcus Smith the key. Maybe put Farrell at 12. You've boxed yourself by making him captain. We've already talked about this in the show earlier. I would like to see Marcus Smith start, and let's see what he can do with 10s that are like for like him. Tamak on the other side, Smith on the other side, both like to dance with their feet and give us some ball action at Twickenham.
Yeah, that would certainly be an interesting battle in terms of ball on hand for those two 10s, but we'll wait to see if that happens. Farrell obviously is holding the 10 shirt at the moment, but possibly the most interesting matchup of the weekend. Ireland are continuing their roll to the Grand Slam, and they will do that against Scotland at Murrayfield. Now, Scotland have lost in the last 7 meetings between these two sides, and they haven't won since 2017. That's a long time. Do you think that's going to change, Alex?
No, because not only have Ireland been the best team in the tournament so far, they haven't had all of their best players available. Tide Furlong, Gibson Park, Henshaw all are coming back, as well as Sexton and Ringrose going to come back as well. That is scary for any side, let alone the best side in the tournament. Gibson Park, I think, probably the 3rd best 9 in the world right now. If he plays as well as he had been before he got injured, that's an unreal amount of quality to come back.
Yeah, that Scottish quality he talks about in terms of the attack and the ability to convert their chances that they get. But if Ireland are taking off Jake Condon this past weekend to bring on Peter O'Mahony, it's just ridiculous. But Scotland also have some world-class operators that haven't really fired. Hamish Watson, he's working his way back.
Well, Hamish Watson was taken off after a couple of minutes due to the red card, so he never really managed to, get a chance to fire.
Yeah, and that's a challenge he's going to have if he starts again. Does Chris Harris come back from good celebrations to join the fray? He really cannot take any one of those two off, Tuipulotu or Hugh Jones. But it's secure having him on the bench, and we've seen that Blake Kinghorn has also put his hand up, world-class operator when he was here at Twickenham. But I don't think they have enough. There's, for lack of a better word, there's a playfulness, childlike behaviour that Scotland does in some cases that cost them matches. And I'm calling it for Ireland. Even if it's at Murrayfield, I think Ireland will run away with it.
And if there is one way, though, that Scotland are going to conquer this Irish defence, it's through Finn Russell. Now, we saw on the weekend that sometimes he gets it wrong for that intercept try. But when he gets it right, giving the right pass, for example, to Hugh Jones for that try from that short line, he gets it absolutely right. Now, Caleb, how do you think his sort of flat to the line attack is going to fare against this incredible and incredibly organised Irish defence.
Yeah, and I think what hasn't been talked about in terms of the Ireland, we've seen how Andy Farrell, he was a world-class defence coach before he took the front seat, but he also has great operators helping him in Paul O'Connell and Mike Catt. And they've obviously looked at Finn Russell. I wouldn't be shocked if they start O'Mani and they give him license to go, like just sort Finn Russell out, make sure you rattle him, which I'll assume Gregor Townsend will do the same. I think the best thing Ireland does is they take away time on the ball, but Finn doesn't need that much time. So it's interesting, but with Ireland ability to overload the defense in terms of their continuous phase play and holding onto the ball, it's going to be crucial. But I don't think Finn Russell has enough to kick on that Scottish side to beat an Irish team that has so much depth and building. Like Stockdale hasn't played, you've got Joe Carberry hasn't played, like you mentioned, Henshaw hasn't played. They've got 4 world-class centres that can then swap around if they all fit. No chance for Scotland.
No chance at all at Murrayfield. That's a big call. Alex, are you feeling the same way?
I don't think there's no chance. You were right to say that Finn Russell is the way to break down this Irish defence. You saw in the France game that when they were broken up, when France made the game loose, when they kept the ball in play for ages, that's when they found the space to then go and score, and that's what Scotland tried to do against France their own way. And Finn Russell's the catalyst for that. He needs to do sort of his maverick stuff, even though I don't like calling him a maverick, to try and break this Ireland defence down. If he can do that, there's obviously a chance. And I wouldn't say that there's no chance of them going on and winning it, but Ireland definitely the favourites.
Yeah, and obviously we're all here to see some great Six Nations rugby. We might have TW2 right up here, but we want to see some good rugby, right? And there's a potential for there to be a 3-way shootout going into the final round of the Six Nations if things go the right way. Now, if England beat France at Twickenham and Ireland lose to Scotland at Murrayfield, then we will have a 3-way shootout for the final between those two. It won't include France, it'll include England, Ireland, Scotland.
And Scotland. But France have the keys to that thing happening. France need to lose to England. And I don't think that happens. I don't think...
Or would you like to see it happen? That's a different question.
No, I wouldn't, because I'd like England to keep building. I'd like not have them put out their best game now because the team going through transition. So I think it helps them to not win and find things that they need to tweak. If they win, Steve Borthwick always... You're
sounding very, very World Cup centric when you say that.
I am. It's the small little showdown that's happening in France around about September. So, yeah.
What's happening there? Oh, never mind.
Never mind.
Get Eddie on the phone.
Yeah.
Talk about the World Cup.
So I don't think that happens. I think Ireland win the Grand Slam.
You think Ireland win the Grand Slam? Yeah. How can they win the Grand Slam?
They have to win the next one.
No. They've lost. Oh, Ireland. Sorry, I thought you said France. Sorry.
I think Ireland win the Grand Slam. They beat Scotland and they win their final match on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I think it's nice and straightforward for them.
They're playing good rugby. They're well coached, and Johnny at the wheel.
Johnny at the wheel. Do you think the inevitable? Are Ireland going to do it?
Yeah. I mean, as you said, Johnny at the wheel. And as I said earlier in the show, he's probably the form 10 in the world right now. So it's theirs to lose, I think. But yeah, I hope it goes down to a showdown, because then England could win the Six Nations. It would be like when Wales won it the other year under Pivac, and they just really didn't deserve it. But, you know.
Yeah, and they play like 3 games with 14 men.
Well, we're all just in Andy Farrell's world, and we're just living in it, aren't we?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Boys, thank you very much for joining me. Caleb and Alex for joining me on the table, as well as Fergus and Imogen, who joined me on the table as well again today to review this round of the Six Nations. Thank you as well to Reuven, as always, behind the cameras and as our producer. And that is all for this week of the TW2 Six Nations review. We'll be seeing you again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much for joining us.